Today, I'm really pleased to be joined by Peggy Hubbard, who is the Executive Director of NAMI Iowa, as well as Mary Neubauer. During this legislative session, I had the amazing honor to sign into law comprehensive mental health reform. That piece of legislation passed both chambers unanimously, and as I've said, builds upon the existing adult mental health system. Now Iowans will have access to the full array of mental health care that they need regardless of where they live. While that landmark legislation represented an important step forward, I also recognize that our children's mental health and well-being system is not where it needs to be. We lack the same coordination, consistency, and access to services that currently exist for the adults through the mental health redesign. We must do better for Iowa's children. And so that's why today I'm pleased to be signing my second executive order. This executive order provides the first of many steps to establish a children's mental health system. With the signing of this executive order, a children's mental health board will be established. Initially, the board will develop and recommend specific steps to build an integrated, well-coordinated, and sustainable children's mental health system. Long-term, the board will serve as the state board providing oversight and technical assistance to the entire system. While we're here this morning due to the countless hours of dedication and attention to this issue by many, I want to thank the work groups that have convened over the years and the most recent Children's Mental Health and Wellbeing Advisory Committee for their collective efforts. It's your guidance and results that serve as the basis for my executive order. I also want to thank Director Foxhoven, Rick Schultz, and the many legislators who have tirelessly worked on this topic for many years, and that includes Representatives Heaton, Fry, and Heddens, and Senators Costello, Segabart, Mathis, Bolcom, and Reagan. In partnership with Iowa's legislature, advocates, and state agencies, and many others, I look forward to taking this first step towards creating a comprehensive mental health system for Iowans of all ages. So, read just the beginning of it, and then I'll sign it, and we'll let the rest of the speakers speak. Whereas the health, safety, and welfare of Iowa's children are of the utmost importance, and whereas ensuring the health, safety, and welfare of Iowa's children relies upon access to necessary and appropriate mental health care services, and whereas 1 in 5 adults experiences a mental health condition each year, with half of all mental health conditions beginning by age 14 and 75% of such conditions beginning by age 24. And whereas current systems are inadequate to address the mental health needs of Iowa's children, and whereas a children's mental health system dedicated to improving the well-being of Iowa's children, designed to build healthy and resilient children and families, meant to provide for educational growth, and committed to coordinating medical and mental health care, will require a coordinated cross-systems effort. Now therefore I, Kim Reynolds, Governor of the State of Iowa, do hereby declare that the interest of Iowa's youth are best served by the establishment of a statewide mental health system that is committed to improving children's well-being, building healthy and resilient children, providing for educational growth, and coordinating medical and mental health care for those in need. I hereby order the establishment of the Children's System State Board to serve as a single point of responsibility in the development and implementation of a children's mental health system as recommended by the Children's Mental Health and Wellbeing Advisory Committee. Okay. So as I said in my condition of the state, to improve Iowa's mental health system, we must identify the gaps, and the Children's Mental Health Board will take a comprehensive look at what resources are currently in place and develop a strategic plan with specific recommendations to implement the children's system. I'm excited to continue working with Iowa's families, advocates, and this Children's Mental Health Board to make sure that no parent, child, friend, or neighbor has to suffer in silence when it comes to mental health. Lieutenant Governor?
Well, thank you, Governor, and good morning. I want to echo the governor's appreciation to the many individuals who have served as advocates for Iowa's youth. The governor said in her condition of the state that providing compassionate mental health care was a priority. And I can tell you that she's driven that conversation every single day since then. I know because I've had the privilege of having a behind the scenes view of her advocacy. She also said that no Iowan should suffer in silence when it comes to mental health. And that, of course, includes especially our children. Creating a children's mental health system from scratch is complex, and it will not happen overnight. But I've witnessed the governor's dedication and the dedication of those here with us today, both behind us and here in the audience as well. Their dedication to addressing the gap in mental health services and systems for children. So I know we won't stop working to improve our mental health system until we get it right. And we know that this is a process that can work in building consensus, as the overwhelming support for this session's mental health reform bill proved. We all look forward to getting to work on this very important issue. At this time, I'll turn the podium over to Peggy Huppert, the Executive Director of the Iowa chapter of the National Alliance on Mental Illness. Peggy.
I'm pleased and honored to participate in this important occasion on behalf of the National Alliance on Mental Illness in Iowa. There are many people who have worked on this issue for many years, as the governor and lieutenant governor both alluded to, advocates, parents, providers, state officials, and legislators. I thank them and honor them for their service and work, and know that they are up to the challenge to help Iowa children get the mental health care they need. On behalf of all of them, I thank Governor Reynolds for her engagement and leadership. Ever since the reorganization of adult mental health services in Iowa 6 years ago, what to do about the kids has been on the table. Certainly, there has been progress over the years, mainly through the Children's Mental Health and Wellbeing Advisory Committee. But the fact is there is still no system, no plan, no accountability, and little funding. It is my hope and belief that a year from now, we will be able to stand before you and say that has changed. I'm here as part of my job, but also as the mother of 2 adult children who live with mental health disorders, one of whom was diagnosed as a child. I often hear parents and other family members, after going through NAMI classes and support programs, say, if only I had known. I've said it and I've felt it. But guilt and regrets don't do us much good. We can only act now on what we know. And if there are no resources or services available, our good intentions are for naught. The pain of parents desperately trying to be advocates for their children, knowing they have a life-threatening condition, should be felt and absorbed by all of us. Not addressing the needs of children with serious emotional disorders usually has lifelong consequences. That should be a concern, not only on a human level, but an economic one, because they are much more likely to end up disabled, incarcerated, or homeless. As a member of the Complex Needs Work Group last year, I saw the power of the right group of people working hard together to come up with concrete, evidence-based solutions. The governor supported us, and the legislature came together unanimously to approve our recommendations. It was a welcome example of bipartisan cooperation on a critical issue. I believe the same thing can happen for kids through this new group, and I pledge to do everything in my power to help make it successful, to assure our children get the mental health care that they need and deserve. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Mary Neubauer, and I live in Clive. Many of you know that in the 7 months since our son Sergey took his own life, my husband Larry and I have been pushing for change in mental health care here in Iowa. Sergey was 18 when he died and had been battling major depression, PTSD, and anxiety for years as a result of his tumultuous childhood prior to our adoption of him. So our son was definitely among the statistics on childhood mental illness that the governor cited in her executive order here today. It's for Sergey and the millions like him who perhaps can't find their own voices that we have been pushing for change. If this kind of tragedy could happen to us, it could happen to anyone, anywhere, at any time. That is absolutely why it is time for this conversation and the work embodied by this executive order. When Governor Reynolds signed the suicide prevention training and mental health care reform bills into law last month, I described them as creating a framework for the programs to be developed and the improvements to be made. And several of us there that day, including the governor, said it was just the start of the conversation. So today I thank Governor Reynolds for demonstrating that this conversation is continuing. This executive order is another real acknowledgement that we as a state need to do better, that these issues absolutely matter, and that we are prepared to do the hard work to get there. I believe this executive order also demonstrates that change can happen in Iowa or anywhere if caring people are willing to be involved and take the time to educate themselves about the issues. I thank the state leaders on both sides of the aisle who have been part of this effort so far. And although I am likely creating more work for them with what I'm about to say, I urge Iowans to whom mental health matters to continue to tell their own stories and make their voices heard. That's how we can ensure that the work described in this executive order will remain a priority. Thank you.
We'll open it up to questions on this topic.
The council that is not done the work, not up on all the names of all these councils, but the ones that do the work on child mental health.
Yep, yep.
Haven't they already come up with the recommendations that are needed? What's going to be different with this?
Well, I think it allows us to take some of the work that they've done, and they were instrumental in helping us decide what stakeholders that we needed at the table. So was Mary, and so was Peggy, and a lot of other individuals helped frame the executive order. So we had the right people at the table. And so, as I said in my remarks, just like with the complex needs study, what this allows us to do with this executive order and this board that we're creating is to really take all of the ideas that they've been working on for several years, bring them together, and look how we start to implement that. Look who we need to be serving, identify ways that we can not only put a system together, but that we can sustain it in the long run. And so that's the conversations that they'll have. They'll take a look at what some of the recommendations are. But the work that was done in that complex needs study really made it easier, I think, for the legislature to take those recommendations and put those into legislation. And I'm really, really proud of that piece of legislation that I had the honor to sign earlier this year, because it was really the end product of a lot of people working together to really address the barriers in the system to take us to the next step. But we're never going to stop. There's always going to be additional things that we can do. And everybody said it that day. Thank you for signing this piece of legislation, but now we have to put a system together for our children because we don't have one right now. And I heard that from stakeholders, parents, from legislators who are committed to getting this done. Well, we'll take a look at that moving forward, but I can tell you when the comprehensive mental health reform bill passed, when it passes unanimously with the stakeholder and the involvement that we had from so many people, that tells you that there is a commitment from this body and this administration to make sure that we fund and we can sustain the recommendations that were put in place. So that's part of what they're tasked with bringing back to us in November, I think, or it's this year, what that looks like, what their recommendations are, and then we sit down and start working through that. Sometimes there'll be sometimes there's existing resources that need to be reallocated. So that's a part of it as well.
So in the 19 budget, we will see kind of financial and state and stuff.
Well, we need to take a look at what the recommendations are. I think that'll be part of it. Again, sometimes it's, it will at some point, I'm sure, require new money. I mean, I'm not saying that. That would be disingenuous for me to say that. But sometimes to get started, there are additional resources that can be reallocated, and we need to take a look at that.
When will the ball get rolling or start meeting?
that change? Well, if I know the individuals that have talked to me and that are excited about getting this going, I bet if I could identify who the individuals are in this work group, they would start tomorrow. I am pretty darn confident of that. So it's a priority. We'll make sure that we get the people identified and get the group up and going. Anything else?
You anticipate making some, based upon this, will you make some recommendations?
Thanks.
In your.
Thanks for that. Well, that's a lot of what ifs, but listen, I hope the executive order says to everybody that this is a reflection of the priorities of Iowans. This is what we've heard. We've taken some really significant steps together to make sure that we have, I think, a really comprehensive mental health system in place. And it's happened, it started in 2013. It was a kind of a good start, but a rocky start. But we recognized as you continue to evaluate the program that there were still barriers and gaps that we needed to address. And that's what the complex needs study report did, is took a look at it and identified what we can do better. And so that's a similar process. And I think Mary made a really good comment, because of the framework that we have in place with the comprehensive mental health reform, that gives us a really good framework to start from. So we're starting in a little bit different place, but this is a different, a different set of individuals that have different needs that we need to, take a look at in a little bit different manner. But the framework is there, I think, to allow us to get to work and to get this system in place. Just one second, okay? Let's just make sure that there's not any additional, and then we'll go back, okay? Well, first of all, I just want to thank you both for your just continued advocacy and passion to get this done. So you're not done yet. Thank you.
Your office saying that it has zero documentation regarding retirement date. And they said that it's not needed because she's an at-will employee. Do you think that's fair that political appointees are held to a different standard when it comes to allegations and misconduct?
Well, first of all, I have said from the very beginning, and you were on the other side trying to hit us on not acting appropriately when it came to sexual harassment. I said that I have a zero tolerance policy, and that means a zero tolerance policy. And these were credible allegations, and he's an at-will employee, and we terminated we terminated Mr. Jameson. So
Is that fair that the public doesn't get to know what happened?
first of all, this is about the individuals. I want every employee in this state to know that we have a process in place. We have laid out who they're to go to if they feel that they've been sexually harassed. I want them to feel confident in the policies that we've laid out. And if that means protecting them confidentially, then that means following through with that. So I want them to know that they have a safe environment to work in. I want them to feel confident in the process. And if they want to come to me in a confidential manner, I want them to know that I'm going to honor that. Because most importantly, it is about the victims. And sometimes they don't come forward because they're afraid to. So I want to make sure that they feel confident in the process, and they know that when we say we have a zero tolerance policy, that we have a zero tolerance policy. And in this case, it was an individual that was at will, and I was able to make the decision.
Governor, I just want to ask about Governor Gray. You had as your special guest, he's been accused of very serious sexual misconduct. The governor said that he should resign. Do you think he should resign?
Well, first of all, I am the governor of Iowa, not the governor of Missouri. And it is not my place to weigh in on every scandal, every tweet, every comment. I am working on behalf of Iowans. It is up to the people of Missouri, the legislators, or the courts to decide if he has acted inappropriately. I don't know the details. My job is to work on behalf of Iowans, and that's what we're doing every day. And that's why, again, I'm proud to stand here this morning and sign the executive order that I have signed that puts a working group together to address a really important issue in the state, and that's children's mental health. And so that's what I'm focused on. I'm focused on wrapping up this legislative session. I'm focused on building on the progress that we've made last year and this year and over the past several years to continue to move this state forward. And that's where my effort should be.
Governor, a follow-up question about Jameson. You have a long working relationship. Should you have recused yourself in this matter, given that working relationship?
I think I said when I was asked that before, this isn't a selective zero tolerance policy. It's a zero tolerance policy. And I don't care who you are. I have a lot of friends and colleagues that I've worked with over the years, but we said we had a zero tolerance policy. And that means that applies to everybody, everybody.
Where do you think, your negotiations to try to negotiate that?
Well, we had a lot of good conversations last week. We continue to have those conversations. We'll be meeting again today, and with several meetings last week, we're making progress. And I look forward to getting something done. You know, with our tie to federal deductibility, with the historic tax reform that was passed at the federal level in December, it's really important that we get something done this year so we can pass those same savings on to Iowans. And that's what we're working on each and every day. Well, that's part of the negotiations. You know, people have ideas of what that looks like. You find out where you have similarities. You look at the areas that you don't agree on, and you try to work towards compromise. And that's what we do every single day. That's called the process. That's how it works. And that's what we're continuing to do. I think the good news is that we're still talking, we're still at the table, and we're still working to get something done. So that should be the takeaway. You know, nobody took their ball and went home. We're still having conversations because we know it's important for Iowans, and that's what we're going to continue to do.
Go back to the predecessor. One of the reasons, for instance, he cited case of individuals with mental illness was that previous filings or the reason for being let go from a job is not available. So what is the policy for employees versus at-will employees? So for example, if some at-will employee in state government is fired, is there any way for a future employer to find out why that person was fired?
Well, because he is an at-will, Kay, I don't have to give a reason. They are an at-will employee, and they are hired and served at the pleasure of the governor, whoever that may be. And so I'll go back again. I had a zero tolerance policy. These were credible allegations, and I took action the next day.
And that policy be changed?
Governor, in terms of, you're saying it's an issue of protecting victims, but with the Senate GOP caucus report, you had mentioned that if there was a way to, release information with protecting the sensitive information, that you would support that. I was just wondering what the difference is here, protect the identity of the victims and still release that information about what.
I was asked to have this remain confidential, and I am honoring the request of the victims.
That's our time. Thank you.